And I think this generation of parents, which is probably your millennials, is very learn who you are, individualistic, and
Mhm.
like I want my kid to be able to explore. And
Mhm.
so sometimes I think when you do that, you
Mhm.
remove the word no, which then creates just a
Mhm.
well, I can, and nothing wrong with that. But I
Mhm.
think there has to be boundaries that are set so that they understand like no is an okay word. Like we
Right.
can say that.
Teaching fifth grade, most kids do have phones.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the social media. What social media do they
Mhm.
have?
Yeah.
And if they already have it, then
Mhm.
it's, hey, looking those accounts, checking those DMs,
Yeah.
because what I have found in friends, like in my personal friends, and then being a teacher as parents, just kind of give them the phone and then they don't check through it.
Yeah.
And I had someone go, "Oh, you read their text messages?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Absolutely." And my daughter will say, "Well,
Yeah.
I know you're going to find that whenever you read my text messages, you're going to see this and just know the backstory." And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a negative thing.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. Um, you're reading her text messages?
yeah. Heck yeah.
Welcome to Speak Life, the podcast where we believe that words can empower,
Mhm.
heal, and inspire. My name is Matt Ferguson, and I have the pleasure of serving as the next gen pastor over at Life Fellowship Church. And I'm so excited that you guys are spending a few minutes with us today. I've got a couple of friends with me here. I've got my favorite co host ever in life and in podcasts, my wife, Jennifer Ferguson. You want to introduce
Yeah.
yourself there, Jen?
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm Matt's wife. I am a fifth grade teacher at an intermediate school here. And Matt is my favorite person too.
That felt forced. That felt like you felt like you had to say
Absolutely
that.
not. Absolutely not.
Well, then my twin brother is also with us today. My
Come
good
on now.
friend,
Yes.
next gen pastor down at One Community Church, Pastor Andre. Say hello to the kids at home.
What's going on, everybody? I actually didn't know where you were going the
I
first one.
didn't
You said
either.
like the favorite. I was
Yeah.
like, I started to get ready, and then you went to your bride, which was the right move to make.
It was the
I
right move.
actually questioned it
But
myself.
But glad to be here hanging out with you guys.
awesome. Well, we're going to spend a few minutes today just kind of hanging out and talking about all things this next generation. So kids, students, young adults,
Hmm.
we're all parents, we're all raising kids, we're all ministry workers and school teachers working directly with kids. So we just thought we'd spend a few minutes kind of chatting through some of the current trends and challenges and things that we're facing and that we know a lot of you are facing as well. So man, why don't we kick it off with you, Andre? Man, what do you think the biggest challenge is today? Just we'll start with the parent perspective.
Hmm.
Like, what's the biggest challenge of raising kids in today's world?
Yeah. I love that we even start with parents.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we're really so focused on the kids, and we don't
Mhm.
really realize that those parents are those key influencers, and their hurts, their pains, their life experiences are what really drive what this generation is doing and how they're reacting. And so I think the hardest thing is probably for a parent to love God and help their kid
Mhm.
to love God,
Yeah.
because it just looks totally different than what they grew up in. And so their kids are watching them. And so if I want my kid to love God, then how is it that I best love God as a parent?
Yeah. I think too, when you think about, man, it's 2024, you
Hmm.
think about 2004, the world was completely different than
Right.
it is today. The world that we experienced as young married couples, as college kids, and we got married in that season. The world's completely different. It's completely different for kids in school, for kids that are in private school or public school. Like the world's just different. It just operates differently. And so you want to talk through maybe a little bit about what you're seeing in the classroom as far as kind of how kids are interacting with each other, how they're interacting with the world, and maybe where you see parents jumping in on that.
Yeah, sure. So I've been teaching quite a few years, about 25. So I've kind of seen the gamut of all of that.
Yeah.
I've taught younger elementary. Now I'm kind of going into the older elementary, and it has changed dramatically. And what I'm seeing is what comes to mind is the lack of respect on
Mhm.
all facets. Like they don't respect each other. They don't respect each other's space.
Mhm.
They're kind of learning not to respect teachers or authority very well.
Mhm.
And so, as negative as that sounds, that they're still good in education.
Mhm.
That's coming across very negative, but that is what I'm seeing. But it kind of matches with what we're seeing in the world as well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Any thoughts on why that is? Like what would drive would drive that type of behavior in kids, or from either one of y'all,
Yeah.
really? Because I mean, I would say the same thing. I think we see the same thing
Yeah.
Yeah.
in the church setting, as we see kids that struggle with boundaries or struggle with personal space, or
Right.
just the socio relational side of just being out among people is
Mhm.
hard for kids. And I think, man, in my mind, I can think of 3 or 4 things that I would point to, but I'm wondering what y'all think about that.
Yeah, I'll jump in there. I think when you look at our kids, we got to think that they went through a pandemic.
Yep.
A
Mhm.
lot of the kids that are entering into school have been at home with family, with relatives, with other friends. So
Mm-hmm.
you saw kind of that cohabitation of, oh,
Mm-hmm.
our families do life together. And so
Mm-hmm.
then we entered into a school system, to a church, and we're like, go be structured.
Mm-hmm.
Where at home there was so much flexibility, there was so much freedom. And so here we are saying, okay, now we need you to have that structure. And I think this generation of parents, which is probably your millennials, is very learn who you are, individualistic,
Mm-hmm.
and like I want my kid to be able to explore. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes I think when you do that, you
Mm-hmm.
remove the word no, which then creates just a,
Mm-hmm.
well, I can, and nothing wrong with that. But I
Mm-hmm.
think there has to be boundaries that are set so that they understand, like, no, no is an okay word. Like we
Right.
can say that.
I think
Yeah.
that's something that we talk about a lot at home with our 2 kids. With we have a 16-year-old son and a 13-year-old daughter, and it's really good for our daughter
Mhm.
to hear the word no,
Hmm.
even when it's not that big of a deal, or
Yeah.
Mhm.
we've just said a lot of yeses back to
Hmm.
back. It's good to throw a no in, just to go, we're still shaping you. We're still in control here. And I think there's a there is a bit of control. And I see
Oh
kids,
yeah.
especially the younger kids, Gen Alpha, so 2011, those kids born at 2011 and to now, they are the hands-on generation. They want to
Hmm.
experiment, they want to explore, they want to see things for themselves, but they still need guidance. They still need shaping. So how do we as parents, how do we navigate that in the day-to-day world of raising kids and working jobs and
Hmm.
cooking meals and mowing lawns and all the things that families have to do? Like, how do we navigate that?
Well, I think
Hmm.
kind of what I was Andre kind of started it with the parents and with even at school, kids see what their parents do.
Mm,
They kind of um I'm trying to think of the word that I'm
modeling.
modeling. Yeah,
Mhm,
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
They model what they see. And so I think even as a parent and as a teacher, you have to, how am I modeling what I want them to do?
Hmm.
Because what I have found with parenting and teaching, when I'm real and when I let them know how I'm feeling and I try to give them respect, I get that back in return.
mhm,
And so sometimes I think, like you said, they don't hear no very often, but you
mhm.
need to tell them, like, hey, here's why that's happening.
Yeah,
And I still love you. I still respect you. And this is why I'm having to tell you. No, that goes with teaching and with parenting for sure.
for sure. Yeah.
I wonder on the teaching side, like I think if you look back in generations, there was a drop off, and really it was what can I get from you, right? So hey,
Mhm,
I'm dropping my kid to school, and this is what I expect from you. I expect that they're gonna learn, grow, come home safe, et cetera, et cetera. And I think this generation has that, but it's like want you to do a little bit more for my kid. Like
mhm.
I want you to love my kid how I would love my kid, but not
Yes.
realizing that you have 20 something kids
Yes.
in that
Mhm.
class, which I think for the church and for the school creates an opportunity for a greater partnership that says, "Hey,
Mhm.
I'm for you,
Absolutely.
but I need you." And so I think if it's just that drop off and woo, all right, bye,
Yeah.
Hmm.
that email's not going to help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that parent conference is really going to be them just saying, "Hey, well, my kid is this,"
Mhm.
and I think there's beauty when the church and even teacher could
Hmm.
be responsive and say, "Hey, I know that, I see that. Let's redirect here."
Mhm.
Because now that person sees that you're for them instead of just like it's a transaction. It's we were talking about volleyball earlier. It's hey, I pay to play, and I think that's what a lot of things are
Yeah.
becoming now. To where hey, I signed you up for this. This is my expectations. You didn't meet my expectations. Guess what? I can take my ball and run. And we're seeing
Mhm.
a lot of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think a lot about like my mom and dad, who were the classic 80s, 90s parents
Hmm.
of they worked, they we had a good home, nothing crazy happened, but they also weren't necessarily overwhelmed with information
Hmm.
from schools or from other. We didn't have email. We didn't. I remember I bring my little folder home for my mom to sign, and sometimes she'd look at it, sometimes she wouldn't, and she'd just sign and send it back. But I think from the parent perspective, I just think about my two kids, the number of emails I get, or the
Mhm.
number of download this app, or be sure to
Oh,
track
man.
your kid in the home access center, and scores have been posted, and like it just, I get overwhelmed, and so
Mhm.
it's almost analysis paralysis. Like I'm paralyzed to do anything,
Yeah.
so I don't do anything,
Yeah, yeah.
and then I wind up, I'm the kid. It's my kid that misses student camp registration.
Mhm.
His dad's on the
Mhm.
staff,
Mhm.
and like,
Hey,
oh,
that's
we
it.
probably should have signed you up for that. Um, I wonder, like, how can we help parents navigate, and when to engage, and when to engage with their kids, and when
Mhm.
to let things slide, so to speak, if that makes sense.
It's such a delicate thing,
Yeah.
and if you've never seen it, which we were talking about earlier, that's why, like, how you were raised really, really matters. Like, if you had parents who raised you and they were really
Mhm.
just on top, authoritative, then I think that parent leans towards the flexibility and the freedom for it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think for us, it is like creating awareness for parents.
Mhm.
It's communicating, I think, one, to the kid that needs to know something, but then also to the
Yeah.
parents so that they're aware of it, but not overwhelming. Because
Right.
if you got that analysis paralysis
Yeah.
on school, work, and
Mhm.
now church,
Mhm.
and every parent wants their
Sure.
kid to have that faith and to grow it, but you can't, like, gone are the days like, here's just a flyer, here's
Yeah.
just an email. Like, I think the real way to do it is to have intentional create spaces for intentional
Mhm.
conversations that bring awareness.
No,
And
that's
so I
good.
can't assume that you know this.
Mhm.
Like, I've got to, hey, did you know that we have this coming up right here
Yeah.
and you need to sign up, whatever, and all that good stuff? And they're like, man, like, thanks for being a real person
Yep.
and not just sending me something hoping that I'm going to read it,
Yeah.
because I think I have 10,000 emails that are unread right now. My
With
admin
you, with you,
despises it.
for sure, for sure. I think too, there's value in inviting the parent into the school space, the church space,
Mhm.
this, like, being involved in what your kids are involved in,
Mhm.
not building an idol out of your kids, or not living your fantasies and dreams through your kids, but being involved in the things that interest them and the things that they want to be involved in, gives you buy-in relationally with your kid, and
Mhm.
it gives you a little bit of insight. Like, I'll never forget, our daughter is starting 8th grade in the fall. So last fall, she was in 7th grade in middle school, and she had a meet the teacher night. It was like 4 weeks into the school year,
Mhm.
and it was like on a Wednesday,
Yeah.
and so she wanted to go to church, and Jen serves at church, so they couldn't go. So I went, and she had printed out her schedule, and she handed it to me, and she goes, okay, you're going to go to my school at 6 o'clock tonight, and you're going to walk my schedule.
Okay.
I made it to one class. So basically what they were trying to do was like a modified version of the day. Like every
Yeah.
10 minutes the
Yeah,
bell
yeah,
rang and
yeah.
you went to the next class. I got to the first class, the bell rang, the halls filled with adults. I had no idea which way to go. There were no signs, there was no one to ask. I was completely overwhelmed. And I never saw another teacher for like the rest of the time. I was just spent walking around until finally the principal stopped me and was like, "Do you need help?" And I was
Right.
like, "Yes." And so I remember going home and I asked Landry. I was like, "Landry, I messed up. I didn't see some of your teachers, and the schedule was too hard." And she goes, "Now you know how hard it is."
Man.
And I was like, I
Right, right.
was like, "Never again am I going to bark at you for
Yeah.
being tardy or for getting overwhelmed." It's it's a lot to navigate as an adult,
Mhm.
and it's so much for them to navigate at 11, 12, 13, 14, 10. We forget that they're still young, they're still fresh. um so that was something that took away from me, like, allowing myself to be involved in her activities, or supporting her activities, gives me a window into her world,
Oh, absolutely.
that now I see her as a person and not
Mhm.
just as a kid. And these are all the things you're trying to
Yeah.
manage. So I think anytime parents can do that, or we can do that as teachers, as ministry
Mhm.
leaders, I think that's a win for
Mhm.
everybody. Um,
But no, just to that, and it's being present in those
mhm,
spaces, right?
mhm.
And so, reading a book called Seen, and you probably heard
Yeah.
of
Oh yeah.
Dr. Shinway, and just the idea of parents that show up regularly, um, responsibly, and then just one of them is the idea of presence.
Yeah.
And so I show up to a lot of things,
Mhm.
but there's a difference when I'm present.
Mhm.
And so they always my family jokes about me because I'm at the volleyball games and they're like, oh, he's in volleyball dad mode. And like
Mhm.
volleyball dad mode is like arms crossed, but I am zoned in. And so like my daughter knows like if she looks over, like
Yeah.
dad's there. Dad's not email and whatever. And so
Mm.
it's unplugging even from the technology, it's unplugging from the
Yeah.
busyness. And it's just like you say, it's sitting there. We like to call it getting in the well. And
That's good.
let me just see what's going on in your life. And then asking
Mhm.
questions, not making the assumptions.
Mhm.
So hey, how is it getting to that class? How is it doing this? And just okay. And then the question after the question, okay,
Mhm.
what's harder? What makes it hard?
Yeah.
Man, thanks for telling me that.
Yep.
And you're not going to get a great conversation every time. You might get that one word thing, but at
Right.
least there was an attempt. I was present and we're building on it.
And here's the deal. They know the difference.
Oh,
They know the
absolutely.
difference between how was your day? Do you have any homework?
Hmm.
What do you need to do tonight?
Hmm.
And man, tell me something you learned today. Like,
Hmm.
man, what was the most stressful thing you had to do today? They know the difference between somebody just trying to check off a list and
Right.
somebody trying to really engage. And so I wonder too, then if you flip the conversation, if that's the school educational side, then how do we flip that conversation to the spiritual side? Like,
Hmm.
how do we engage them in spiritual habits and practices and who God is and what he's done for us? Like,
Hmm.
how do we engage our kids there?
For me, it always goes back to conversation and
Yeah.
our
Mhm.
kids seeing how the Lord is working in
Yeah.
our life. And I'll never forget one time Landry said, she's our 13-year-old, and it was like a year ago. She was 7th grade and she was
Mhm.
like, "You're kind of my hero." And I was like, "What?" And
Mhm.
she's like, "I just see you reading your Bible." And it just took me back because I'm not, I, I read my Bible before she gets up. I read,
Mhm.
sometimes some days I don't do it because I have to be at work really
Mhm.
early. And she goes, "I just always see you." And I forgot how she worded it, but it just really made me think, oh my gosh, she sees me when I'm worshiping and she doesn't
Yep.
know it and I don't know it.
Yep.
She sees me, I serve, just with you being
Mhm.
a pastor,
Mhm.
I've always loved serving anyway. So I serve in student ministry, I serve
Hmm.
in kids ministry. And so I think she's even said, "You're always so nice to those people when they're not being very nice to you."
Mhm.
And I just, for spiritual, and to go back to finish that thought is to always thought, hey, this was really hard for me, but I knew God would be faithful
Yeah.
because, and then show when he did. And then,
Yeah.
our family walked through a really hard time 3 years ago. We never held back.
Mhm.
We didn't know the answer. We just know, hey, this is hard,
Mhm.
but here's the promise God has told us, and we know he's going to
Yeah.
fulfill it. So when he did, it was really neat to her to see that
Hmm.
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
in her mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's and not just her. And I don't want to zero in on her the whole time, but I think lots of kids, the ones that I see who
Yeah.
are chasing after the Lord and who have a spiritual relationship with Jesus, 9 times out of 10, they have someone in their life, an adult in their life,
Yeah.
Yes.
who has shown them the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Hmm.
and has allowed them to walk in age appropriate ways
Mhm.
with them. You referenced 3 years ago, man, we shielded our kids from a lot of things in that
Mhm.
season, but there were some things that we just couldn't. Like, it just, here's what's happening,
Yeah.
and boom, 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 boom. And a lot of times I remember Landry would ask questions in those seasons. She'd go, what's going to happen with this? And what about that? And a lot of the time the answer was, baby, we don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, but here's what scripture tells me. And
Yeah.
here's where I'm pulling my faith from, or my support from. And in the time, in the moment, it never felt like it was a big Billy Graham revival
Right.
moment
Right.
where,
Right. Right.
Yep.
Right.
every auditorium by the sound of
Yeah.
my voice.
Yeah.
We didn't have people down front of the
Yes.
altar. It was just like a Tuesday night, and the kitchen was a mess, and
Right.
Yeah.
we're eating Cheetos, and it's like, ugh, okay. It's messy and it's imperfect.
Yeah.
But kids, and especially these 13-year-olds,
Yes.
they want to see real.
Mhm.
Right.
They have grown up with clean and crisp and
Hmm.
technology and excellence and content and
Yeah.
all that stuff. They want to see the behind the scenes. Okay, I get that you made this cool video. Tell me how you made it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what
Yeah.
was the behind the scenes? I get that you love Jesus, but how did you get there? How
Hmm.
did you answer this question? How did you get through this thought? And I think a lot of times I see parents, again, they want especially the millennials, because the millennials grew up with, they lived through the birth of social media, right?
Hmm.
That was their thing. They want a perfect Instagram square of here our kids are with our lavender
Oh,
latte
yeah.
and our Old Testament and our highlighter pen, and we're
Yeah.
praying. It's just a perfect picture.
Mhm.
And in reality, that's not it at all. It's
Yeah.
very, very messy. It's our kids are in the car and we're slinging handfuls of
Mhm.
Cheerios to the back seat because we're 10 minutes late to school, and I love you and God loves you, and that may be all I get out in the mornings. I make the joke all the time when we do parent stuff at the church that, that our kids are 13 and 16, so everybody gets along at all times. Our house is completely put together,
Yeah.
and we wake every day, quote a psalm and a proverb to start every day.
That's
I
it.
mean,
Nope.
no,
That's it.
we are slinging Smuckers and
Yeah.
backpacks. We are screaming. You don't have time to shower. You skip your teeth. Just put your shorts on and let's go. And I think those are the moments where I feel guilty that, oh my gosh, I didn't pray for him, or I didn't have like they're going to go to school and be stressed out now because I was yelling. And really what the Lord says is that it's not necessarily this series of perfect mornings over and over again. It's these moments
Mhm.
where they are listening and they are paying attention and they are asking questions. And those are the moments where, if we have our spiritual eyes open, that we can lean in and teach them
Mhm.
who God is. Here's who God is to me,
Yeah.
and then give them the space, which I think is the hardest part from what you said earlier, giving them the space to figure it out for themselves.
Mhm.
I don't want my kids to go to church because mom and dad went to church and my
Right.
dad worked there. So I was kind of there all the time. So I just did it anyway. I want both of them to have their own individual experience.
Yeah.
And I have to be okay with it may look way different from mine. And they may make choices that make me sad
Yeah.
and hurt me, but ultimately they are children of God who God is chasing after in his
Yeah.
own way to them in a way that makes them real.
And there's beauty to all of that, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you look at Jesus, Jesus gets his disciples and he sits down with them and they ask questions, but they get a chance to see him do life. And I think if you look at our parents,
Mm-hmm.
you'll see that I didn't have in-depth conversations with my parents. I think the best thing that I ever that like the hardest conversation is normally when somebody passed to talk about
Mm-hmm.
this is how they passed, this is what happened. But nobody was ever saying, hey, I had a bad day.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm struggling with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying overly expose your kids to everything,
Right.
but I'm saying there are strategic moments that get a chance to let them know that you are real and more so that God is
Mhm.
present and
Mm-hmm.
real. And so I love the fact that you would have those intentional conversations, have
Mm.
those intentional moments. But just for parents listening, like start small.
Yeah.
Oh
Get those small.
yes.
I remember really sitting down, coming home from Bible study one day. I said, on Monday we're gonna do this. On Tuesday we're gonna do
Yep.
this, and Wednesday and
Yep.
Thursday. And I had this whole plan. Like, my kids sat down and they're like, all right. And after that first one, I was like, we're never doing this again because it was hard.
Yes.
But the thing they really needed is, to your point, is let me just catch you reading your word.
Mm-hmm.
Let me just catch you. So we like to say our idea of like where can you get caught at?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Caught praying. I'm caught. And I'm sad today. Why are you sad? Okay, I'm
Mhm.
feeling this because
Mm-hmm.
this happened. Man, I'm a little overwhelmed, so I apologize, guys.
Yeah.
Like I've had to come and apologize to my kids a couple
Mm.
of times. I'm like, yo, this week was bad.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry because when it's bad, like Dad, we're eating junk food and all this stuff, and they know.
They don't. They do.
They do.
They
Because if
do.
you
They
think
do.
about social media, they're seeing so much. So
Mhm.
they're not only they catching
Mm-hmm.
trends online, but they're catching trends in the house too.
Mm-hmm.
And so they'll see, oh, here we go,
Mhm.
bad week. It's VBS week. Like, here we go.
Why you got to bring up VBS week? Why you got to
Yes.
convict us?
Because I, just,
Yeah.
I just got done with mine, so I can I
Yeah. Oh
can
no, I know.
I can
Oh,
I
we
breathe.
got
know.
to I got to Friday and I was like, "Hey everybody,
We
Dad's
lived it.
back. I'm so sorry. Let me take y'all out to dinner."
Right,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
they know the
They know.
trends, and
Yeah.
so it's the idea of like how do I become authentic
Mm,
and not polished,
right.
and that's what they need.
And I think that's it. It's authentic and not polished,
Hmm.
because they're polished does not impress them. Polished does not inspire them. They are looking for real, authentic people
Hmm.
who will share
Yeah.
all of it
Yeah.
and not just bits and pieces of. I'm wondering too, man, in your house, like how do you guys leverage how do y'all leverage technology, if at all? Like, does that impact how you're talking to your kids about spirituality, about Jesus? Like, does it, are y'all
Yeah.
technology and Jesus? Go.
Yeah, no. Technology and boom, there you have
There
it.
it is.
I offer the flexibility and the freedom for them to explore, but I'm also exploring alongside them, right?
Yeah.
And so there was a season where we did the limits.
Mhm.
There's a season where screen time and all that.
Yeah.
And so as they got older, we had like intentional conversations, and we're just okay, hey, what does this look like?
Yeah.
And so it was like, hey, cool, I'm gonna let this go a little bit, but this does not mean you can just wild out.
Yeah.
There's been tough conversations, easy conversations. We do it together.
Yeah.
Um, and when your kids are different, right? And
Oh,
so,
yeah.
hopefully my son doesn't
Yeah.
see this, but he's my wild child. I love him with
Yeah.
all my heart.
Yeah.
But he got more limits than his sister,
Yeah.
because sister is just like watching the game, talking to her friends,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. But we talk about the dangers.
Yeah.
I will get into the world and ask, hey, what is this game? What does this look like? What do we need to do here?
Mhm.
Just so I can see their world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we'll talk about some of the cultural things, just
Mhm.
because I want to know, do they know
Yeah.
about it? Hey, did you see this new app? Oh yeah, I did see this new app. What do you think about it? I
Yeah.
think it's da 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 da.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather address what needs to be addressed before it gets addressed.
Sure.
And so
Sure. I think too, our kid, especially our daughter, is just begging
yeah,
every other day. Can I get a? What about it? Can I download? And so we've talked through. We've done the same thing, the screen limits and the all that stuff. At the end of the day, I cannot keep it from her for forever,
no,
because the world is growing up around her.
Mhm.
And she's behind, and there are great benefits to some of that technology.
Mhm.
Our student ministry does a great job of leveraging group texts and different Bible reading apps and all that stuff. And there's also the underbelly of, there's also things on the internet or on phones that aren't great.
Right.
Over the summer, I challenged her. I said, okay, here's the deal. If you think you can handle social media, I want you to run my social media account.
Mhm.
And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, here's mics, here's a tripod. You go make reels and
Yeah.
all that, and then we posted it to mine, and she made 2, and she was like, yeah, I'm done. And so, okay, so I bought a little time, but again, I think it's a let's do this together deal.
Mhm.
I know there are all kinds of safety guards. We're a big fan of the Bark app. We use that a lot. But I think too, just leveraging technology as a family
Mhm.
is something that lots of parents are trying to figure out. Of, man, what is a good show we can watch together?
Yeah.
What can we listen to on the radio or a podcast or a whatnot that helps us draw in as a family? Man, I would recommend the Speak Life podcast.
Hey,
It's
there
great.
you go. There
It's
you
great
go.
for the
There you
family
go,
car ride right there for sure.
Leading to that, man, just look at Gen Alpha, right? So we talked about Gen
Mhm.
Z. Gen Alpha
Mhm.
is anybody 2011 till now, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I saw some crazy stat, like 66% of kids under 5 are
It's
already
crazy.
on a tablet
Yeah.
or some type of device, right?
Yeah.
30 something million kids are utilizing the internet and social media into that. And so how then do you have like a teenager who's
Yeah.
like, I want to be on it, and then they walk across a 5-year-old who is in
Yeah.
their tablet? Well,
Yeah.
they can have it,
Yeah.
but what about me?
Yeah.
And so we're trying to be very intentional with values,
Yeah.
right? And so I grew up in the stage where dad said so.
Sure.
I'd like to go here. Well, dad said so.
Yeah.
But I just saw 10 of my friends. What did I say?
Right.
And so that stopped all the conversation. Whereas we'll try to just create those values. And so one of my big things is there's no technology at the table. Like we're eating,
Yeah.
there's no
It's
technology.
good.
But I have to follow it.
Right.
So then what happened one day, and they called me out on it, and I was like, how dare you call me out on this? Because an email came through, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, God, I got to
Yeah.
answer. And they're like, really?
Yeah.
And I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
And so set those values, model those values, but
Mhm.
also reward when it's going well. 'Cause we always want to talk about what's not going well. And so as parents, you've got to talk about what's going well.
Yes.
Hey man, I see that you're modeling this. I think like I see you using the device. Man, great job on that. I see you post. That post looks really good.
Mhm.
You're watching my account. I am watching
Yeah.
your account, but I saw that you're
Mhm.
posting good, because if you only talk about what's bad, that's all
Right.
they're gonna know.
Right.
So how do you help them do the things that are right?
So if either of you had a parent in front of you saying, hey, we're trying to navigate, how much or how little do we let our kids use devices, or how do we leverage technology in our house? Do you have like here's the age, here's how old you have to be to
Mm.
get XYZ? Is it, I mean, you just talked about we've got 5-year-olds that watch Coco
Mhm.
Melon on, see, I know Coco Melon. I'm
Come
still
on,
in
man.
it. I got it. Bluey.
Hey,
I don't really understand Bluey. Do you get it?
I've only watched like 2 episodes,
Okay.
but I just know that once you say that
Once
and the
you
kid is
the kid
present, then
is
they were like,
yeah, Bluey's
"Bluey,"
the
and I think
thing.
it's Bluey's sister, brother,
I don't know. They're
sister. I
dogs.
think
They're
it's sister.
Australian
Yeah.
I
dogs.
think it's
I
sister. I
don't
don't know.
know.
Blue.
We lived through Peppa
Yeah.
Pig, so we
Right.
missed.
Oh, yeah.
We Peppa Pig was
Yeah.
that was our life for
It
a
was
while.
it was Mickey Mouse Clubhouse.
Yeah.
See,
Mm-mm.
Bringing the
classic.
goodies back, you guys.
But how do you like? How do you help parents navigate? What would you say to parents navigating that?
Yeah.
When's a good age to either introduce technology or to allow technology?
For me, I really talk about how important it is to, if you give them technology, because sometimes parents have done it already.
Mm-hmm.
The importance of reading their text, having
Mhm.
bark, because like we do have bark,
Mm-hmm.
but it I want to catch the tone. How are you texting your friends? How are you talking to your friends? How are
Mhm.
you speaking to other people,
Mhm.
about other people? Um, so if I have a parent in front of me, there, I did not realize someone had introduced me. It's called Wait Until Eighth, and it's a big movement, and it's not a Christian based, but it's a big movement of waiting until eighth grade to be getting any kind of technology. And I follow them, and it's very interesting to see they have examples of people that have waited till eighth grade and or
Mhm.
until they've
Mhm.
not waited to eighth grade. So if I have someone asking, I say
Mhm.
waiting is always better,
Yeah.
even though it's very, very hard. But then again, with waiting goes back to teaching. Here's
Yeah.
why you're waiting.
Mhm.
But then if someone has already, teaching fifth grade, most kids do have phones.
Yeah.
But it's the social media. What social media do they
Mhm.
have?
Yeah.
And if they already have it, then
Mhm.
it's, hey, looking those accounts, checking those DMs,
Yeah.
because what I have found in friends, like in my personal friends, and then being a teacher as parents, just kind of give them the phone and then they don't check through it.
Yeah.
And I had someone go, "Oh, you read their text messages?"
Mhm.
And I was like, "Absolutely." And my daughter will say, "Well,
Yeah.
I know you're going to find that whenever you read my text messages, you're going to see this and just know the backstory." And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's a negative thing.
Yeah.
So,
That's good. Um, you're reading her text messages?
yeah. Heck yeah, I have.
I'm
Same
glad
thing.
one of us is on that. Is glad one of us is participating in parenting.
Yeah.
I will say, we moved from Fort Worth to McKinney
Mhm.
3 years
Mhm.
ago. Later was in fifth grade, and we gave her a phone because it was the first time she was going to be physically in a different building during the
Mhm.
day, and we wanted her to keep in touch with friends on that side of town. And I think it took about a month for me to regret that decision
Absolutely.
because it wasn't anything that she did. It was just there were things that happened on a phone
Yeah.
that even though I thought I knew it all, didn't. What happened was she got thrown into a group text message with a bunch of phone numbers that she didn't know because she gave a friend her phone number at school because
Mhm.
hey, let's text, and
Mhm.
off to the races we went in fifth grade, and I was really really sad. So I love that wait till eighth. In fact, I think I heard that
Yeah.
on was it Today Show
I
or
think
Good
so.
Morning
It's a big
America? One of
movement.
those. Like
Yes.
there was
Yeah.
that's something that we'll explore. I would encourage parents to explore too, because
Mhm.
once you ring the bell, you can't unring it. Like there's no
Yes.
going back.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can't
Very
give it and
important.
take it away.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You can give it and take it away, but
Mhm.
once you've opened that box, it's hard to put everything back in. So along those lines too, there's when you're online, especially these last couple weeks, especially in a political season, you
Mhm.
get to see everybody's opinions and everybody's thoughts
Yeah.
on every single thing that is
Mhm.
happening, both minor and major. So, how do you help your kids navigate those topics? And specifically, man, one of the big ones that we see, and the data shows that that health and sexuality and the
Mhm.
LGBT movement, man, how do we help our kids, especially our kids who are growing up in church and we want them to know the Lord? How do we help them navigate all of those things, and specifically the LGBT movement?
Mhm. Mhm.
I want to speak. I know
Yeah.
poor
Go
Andre.
for
Oh,
He's
here we
been
go.
wanting
She's got something.
No, you got
excuse
it.
me, but I read when we are given the questions, and so I was looking through these questions. Am I
You
too?
just blew me up. I thought I was looking like I was all.
You are doing really well.
I don't know where these questions came
I don't
from.
know
They're so
where
I
this
know,
good.
question
right?
came
This is
from.
wonderful.
What is this?
It's a good question I just thought of.
I think when I read that, what really all of it, sexuality, LGBTQ,
Mhm.
all of political season, I really tried to instill what would Jesus do? The good old WWJD.
Mhm.
And that really takes you knowing how Jesus would react to things by reading,
Yeah.
like knowing the Bible
Yeah.
and knowing how did he react? Because
Yeah.
there are very similar things that happened in in the New Testament that shows how he acts.
Mhm.
And so it for me, it always goes back to conversations. In fact,
Mhm.
Landry and I were having a conversation about something that happened, and it was political, and she did not know the basis of it. So I said, well, if you take back the layers of why that really
Mhm.
happened,
Mhm.
here's why that. And she was like, I had no idea. And I think that is what the problem with most of social media is. No one stops to think, okay, wait, what's deeper, what's
Yeah.
bigger. But if then all the other things, like you were saying, sexually and all that
Mhm.
kind of stuff, um how would Jesus would be their friend? Jesus would love them. Jesus has boundaries. You're going to have boundaries. What are your boundaries? Why are the boundaries? Why are
Yeah.
your boundaries? Because that's what I'm saying, or what do you feel like you are
Mhm.
doing
Yeah.
or feeling? I guess
Yeah.
is a better word.
Man, I would have never said that, so I'm glad you did go first, right? You set the bar high. Our team actually sat down and just talked about this, and it was a tough conversation, right?
Mhm.
But when you bring in the idea of what did Jesus do, that
Mhm.
shifted so much.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm talking to a parent, I mean, first and foremost, I want to help you do the research
Yeah.
because I think we can see things and always see that they're bad. And I'm in a season where I'm asking why and what if.
Mhm.
And so the why is this happening? The why is why do they feel this way? And what if is what if we met them and loved them how Jesus? What if we didn't just turn the cheek towards them?
Mhm.
And so I think Doug Phil said it the best. It was like, hey, how you respond to something is how they will
Mm.
view the church's response.
Yes.
And so there's a weight to it as well.
Yeah.
And so what I didn't want to do is if something happens, I'm like, oh my God, I
Yeah.
can't believe, like, no, like, hey, thanks. Like, thank you for
Mhm.
like this being a safe place.
Yeah.
The church, as much as we want it to be the safest place, is not the
It's not.
safest place for people.
Yeah.
And so what you see is pockets of people searching for acceptance. And
Mhm.
so it's not to get, why'd you go there? Oh, because my friends like me, my friends allow me, they saw me for who I am. And
Mhm.
so it's not that there's a wrong, it is
Mhm.
how do I help you? So we like to say this thing, it's time helps build trust,
Mhm.
which then helps share truth.
Mm.
And we
That's good.
often want to just jump right into the truth side of that is wrong.
Yes.
Mhm.
But there's no time or relationship with the people.
Mhm.
There's no
Mhm.
trust built. And so why would I want to listen to you?
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
would I
Yeah.
want to? And so for a parent, it's
Absolutely.
resource and it's asking the questions, but not being afraid of those questions. And so we like to shun away from it. Well, we're not going to talk about it. Well, guess what is the entire world is going. You can't watch anything. You can't listen to
The entire
anything.
world's already talking about it. If you're
Right.
not, they're going to get it from somebody else.
So then they're
Yeah.
going to create their own
Mhm.
understanding of it. You're going to
Mhm.
come and be frustrated and try to adapt it. They're going to say, no, you're not accepting it.
Yeah.
Because I think they said that, like, even though, and it was shifted from church, even though your household isn't experiencing it, people in your household are experiencing it.
Mhm.
And so they're gonna
Mhm.
go to school with different religions, they're gonna go with different genders, with different beliefs and all that.
Mhm.
Home may be safe, but you're then sending them out into the world. And so how do I build those values,
Yeah.
build those conversations to where my kid can then see it and not be blown away or fall
Yeah.
prey to it?
Yeah. I'm laughing because I think my parents were the we're not going to talk about it
Yeah.
family. Like we just, and again, back in the late 19th century, in the 1900s, as the young people like to say, we didn't have
Hmm.
all this extra
Yeah.
pressure, the internet or any of that stuff. So we just didn't talk about that stuff.
Hmm.
And I'll never forget going to college the first day of class. And I walked into class and it was like every belief and every
Hmm.
practice and every thought was like all in this one room. And the professor got up and introduced herself as a lesbian Buddhist. And I was like, I don't even know what those two things are.
Right.
Like, and I just felt like it was like culture shock
Hmm.
for a semester. And so I think the opposite, the pendulum has swung to the opposite side now where our kids are being exposed to it, whether we as parents realize it or not, because what you just said is true. They're going to school, they're hearing things, whether it's public school or private
Yes.
school or a homeschool co-op,
Yes.
they are hearing, they know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they're not, they know at different levels, but
Right.
they're aware. And it's engaging them in conversations of, well, man, tell me what you think about that.
Hmm.
Well, tell me why do you think that way?
Hmm.
And what is it that's led you to come to this conclusion? Again, it goes back to that the basis of your faith and your spirituality. You know, we were getting ready for this podcast and I went to I think it's Global Youth Culture,
Hmm.
globalyouthculture.com, which is a great website from our friends at One Hope. They put out this study of all just the data of what Gen Z and Gen Alpha are experiencing and believing. And according to their data, man, 1 in 4 kids,
Mm-hmm.
1 in 4 teenagers, 13 to 16, either are experiencing same-sex attraction
Mm-hmm.
or believe themselves to be a part of the
Yeah.
LGBT
Yeah.
community. So 1 in 4. That's a ton.
Right. Right.
And so you can't go into a conversation with what you just said of here's the truth and there's what's going to happen to them and da da da.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you mean my friends? But
Mm-hmm.
they're really nice. They're good people. I don't. That causes a lot of confusion and a lot of like angst for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll be honest, man, I've been in conversations as a dad where I am scared to death of what is happening in front of me. And I mean, I'll never forget for a season, I would pick up Landry from school and we would have like 20 minutes until Luke got out. So we'd sit at Luke's school and eat our little Fritos or whatever. And one day she starts telling me about these 2 girls in her class going to the school dance. And it took like the inner Baptist deacon in me. I mean, I put on a suit, I got a name tag, I pulled out the Old Testament, I went
Yeah.
KJV. I was like, here we go. And I was like, okay. And I was like, well, and the Lord stopped me. And the Lord said, ask her what she thinks.
Yeah.
I said, well, I don't want to know what she thinks. I just want to tell her. And I said, okay, so tell me what you think. And she gave the most beautiful, eloquent answer I've ever heard somebody give about. She said, Dad, I think the Lord has put me in this spot for a reason because I think he's going to teach me something and I think he wants me to say something to them. And just from and not a judgment piece, but like just they're his people, that he loves them. And I was like, okay. And so we pulled out some scripture and we talked through and I think that's the part that is scary as a parent is because what if the conversation had gone the other way?
Right.
And she had said, there's nothing wrong with that. And I am too. And here we go. Like that was my fear. Right.
Right.
And that's happening to parents. Like parents
Yeah.
their kids are coming in and they're saying, here's who I am and here's what I believe. And parents are feeling like they have to choose. And so I think for us in this season of all this, what I would call the belief spectrum, right, is we have to teach our kids how to think for themselves and teach our kids how to read the Bible for themselves, how to study God's scriptures, and they have to see it lived out in their homes and their parents. And I'm not saying that if your kid came in and has a different belief that you've not done any of those things.
Right.
What I'm saying is we have to be in a spot where we can engage in a conversation. Absolutely. And we can not out of love and out of truth, but not out of judgment or condemnation. Because what they're finding is what you just said. They're finding acceptance and they're finding community and they're finding people who celebrate them for who they are.
Absolutely.
And that's what everybody's looking for. Right. And so when we come back on the other spectrum and go, well, no, that's wrong because they're going to X, Y, Z or whatever. I think that makes the divide bigger. And so for us, I think as parents, as millennials, as whatever you want to phrase it, I don't even know if millennials is the right thing. We have to be willing to engage in really uncomfortable conversations from a place of truth and love. And we have to teach our kids how to think for themselves. Because if we don't teach them, I guarantee you somebody else will, whether it's a YouTube video, a whatever, a podcast, not this podcast, but somebody will come in and say something different. And so I don't really have a question based off of that, but I'm going to look to you to pass off the conversation.
Well done.
Thank you.
Well done there. That just threw me for a loop.
You're welcome.
When you think about it, is Gen Alpha, right?
Yep.
Is parents want them to be happy.
Yep.
They want to be happy. There's a desire for diversity, but also inclusion of all, right? And so imagine trying to have conversation with our kids. So switching back to the stats. I don't know if it was that one, but there's another one that talks about everybody who was LGBTQ plus was higher in anxiety, higher in stress, higher in all these things. And so then if you have a generation that is probably compassionate, they're going to see that and want to show compassion. So then we don't get to just say, no, don't talk to them.
Yeah.
We got to teach them how to show the compassion. But then also to your point is biblical truths and understanding and just owning God's word. Because guess what? A lot of people that are struggling trying to figure things out, they've looked at the Bible and they've tried to figure it out. And so there's often times, well, they'll know more. Well, tell me about peace. I had 15 scriptures on peace. It didn't work for me.
Yeah.
And then we're like, that's all I had on the card they gave me. But then how do you then say, how do they engage in that
Yeah.
conversation?
Yeah.
And
That's
so
good.
it's just, I think it's knowing our kids, knowing what they're experiencing. Was then you just got. I think we have to open our eyes. We love our kids.
Sure.
Like we love, like not my kid, not my kid, not my kid.
Right.
I promise.
Right.
My kids, your kids. They're all.
Yeah.
There's something.
Yep.
But,
I think ultimately it goes back to what we talked about earlier today was knowing your kid, creating a place where your kid feels safe and can communicate, letting your kids see your faith in the real world, not in some Instagrammable perfect moment, but letting them see you live your faith out and then getting them plugged into a community of people who are going to help raise them and let them become the people, the adults that God's called and created them to be. So whether that's a church, whether that's a family group or whatever that is. I mean, for us, it's the church. For some, it may be different, but my encouragement to parents today would be there at some point, and I don't, maybe, do you still tuck your kids in at night? Your kids are older, right?
No,
You
there's
know.
some nights I let them.
So
go to bed
here's the
and I'm
deal.
tired.
We tucked, yeah. when they're,
On
when our
weekends
kids,
at night.
when my bedtime moved up before theirs, that's when I stopped tucking them in. But there was this sweet moment, this sweet season where we would tuck them in at night and we'd pray and we'd read a book or whatever. Man, I would encourage parents, and we still have moments. It's different now. You know, Landry will come in and say, "Hey, can we watch fail videos on your phone?" Or Luke will want to, "Can we get the recap on ESPN or whatever?" Creating a routine where you're regularly connecting with your kid in the evening hours at the end of the day. I think studies show and statistics show that, man, at the end of the day is when their brain is processing through everything that they went through that day. And that's when they're ready to talk. Yeah. And it wears me out because it's 11:30.
Oh, yeah.
I'm ready to go to bed and I got a meeting at 8 a.m. and you're in here gabbing about so-and-so's feelings and I just want to go to bed. But I think that would be my biggest encouragement is continue to regularly connect with your kids in those evening hours at the end of the day. Hey, I'm headed to bed. Good night. I love you. If they're young, tuck them in, read stories, all that stuff. If they're older, just checking in and going, man, you good?
Yeah.
You need me before I go to bed. And leaning into those moments when they come in and they say, can I talk to you? Like that's a big deal for a kid to ask that and to jump on those moments. So, man, as we get ready to wrap up, man, what other things would you guys tell parents, our listeners today?
I have a quick thought because sometimes when you listen to podcasts or watch podcasts, the people on the podcast seem like, man, that's so big. I cannot get there. Like I'm here, they're way over here. Yeah. And so if you're watching today and you are like, I can't do that. I'm not going to be that good of a parent. And because I think the three of us would be like, we do not have it together. We don't know what we're doing.
Oh,
we make mistakes regularly.
I have to apologize when I get home today.
But just start with you. It starts with you as the parent. It starts with you, where you are with your relationship with God, or where you are with the relationship with your kids. So what I was thinking of, I have a group of girls I hang out with, and we hung out last night. And one of them said, man, I just wanted to talk to my mom. I was so excited to see her. And she just started yelling at me. And it was the end of their work day. And I just said, sweetie, she just was a little stressed out. She took it out on you. That's what moms can do. And I think I gave her an example of how I'd done that. And so just know that you're going to make mistakes, but your kids just want to talk to you. Young kids, like we've been talking about kind of the more middle schoolish, young to old, they just want to be with you and they want to talk through things. And it's okay if you mess up, just start again the next day and say, okay, what am I going to do differently today? How am I going to be better to the people around me in public? How am I going to be better on social media? Because our kids literally are watching us.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably just piggybacking on the idea of when your kids are watching, but it's okay so there's a book called The Gap in the Gain. Really good for me, right? And so the idea is that, man, here's where I want to be. And so what's going to happen is you're gonna read things, you're gonna listen to things, you're gonna watch things, and then you're gonna talk to other people. So this generation of parents is actually really concerned about the thought process of other people, right? And so I think determine where you want to be, but celebrate the gain. And so the gap, if I always look at the gap, like, we don't have 15 hours a week with our kids. I don't know where do you get 15 hours a week? We don't do this, but the gain says that on Monday we watch the movie together. On
Yeah.
Tuesday, we pray together. On
really
Yeah.
just
So
start so
good.
celebrate it, because if you don't, what's going to happen is all you're going to see is where you're not.
Mm-hmm.
And your kids are excited about what they get, and as that increases on that younger age,
Yeah.
that builds habits. It builds who they want to be. So we want to get to our kids' age. Like I feel like I've
100%.
got to go back. Like I feel like I worked
Yeah.
a whole bunch in the beginning, so now I'm trying to gain back time that I didn't have, because I'm like, here's where I want to be. I gotta no. Just celebrate the little wins and know that you're doing okay. And last minute, wherever church you're at, man,
Mhm.
community is so important, and
Very.
Get 'em in.
the right community.
Get them in.
And so jump into a group, figure out how you can, whatever it is, to be around other like-minded believers. Because guess
Mm-hmm.
what? Then you'll grow that faith, and your kids will also grow a like faith. So,
That's really, really good. Man, I'm so glad y'all were able to sit down and have this conversation today. Man, this is our podcast, Speak Life. So be sure to share with some friends, do all the things that you young people do, comment, share, like, all of the things. Follow us for, I have no good content. These have great content. But wherever you're at today, we hope that this encouraged you, and we look forward to connecting with y'all next time.